Cloud. Yep.
Boarding is in progress, everyone. Okay. Yeah, so this is called Preserving Diasporas, and I'll get into why it's called that. Before, let's talk a little bit about Centro, founded in 1973 by a coalition of students, faculty, and activists. The Center for Puerto Rican Studies at Hunter College is the largest university-based research institute, library, and archive dedicated to the Puerto Rican experience in the US. The origins of Centro were collaborative and community-facing. Among its founding principles was the desire to bring the community into the university and to project the university outward in new ways. And here we are now at this Silberman School of Social Work in El Barrio, so definitely in the community. Oh, I want to show a little video. So, okay, this video kind of goes a little bit more into what Centro does, and I think it's a little bit more eloquent than that. Hear that? There's sound coming? No? Sure.
This worked in practice.
Or why it's not working. Well, I don't know how to do it. So basically I'll explain it myself. Centro Library provides access to over 1,400 books, 2,550 dissertations and theses, over 500 titles of historical newspapers and periodicals on 3,700 reels of microfilm, 600 audio recordings, 514 videos and DVDs containing information by and about Puerto Ricans, and 21.3 linear feet of vertical files encompassing a variety of subjects. Our archives have over 300 collections of personal papers from prominent Puerto Ricans like Pedro Pietre, Miriam Colon, elected officials, social activists like Antonio Pantoja, and writers like Ed Vega and Miguel Algarin. We also have the record of many community-based organizations like Aspira. There's an extraordinary amount of information regarding Puerto Rican migrants and the government institutions established to support them. And that number is growing as we have just acquired a couple of collections, and I think we're going to be picking one up next week. So, and the video would go on to say that we also have like a research institution that is, I'm just going to link the video to something at the end, like a document, so you guys can see it. Okay. And then since you guys can't come here, I thought to do a little virtual tour. So this is the hallway leading into Centro, prominent Puerto Ricans on the wall. Here it is. This is the study room, basically. This little desk right here is where you would sign in if you were to come and do some research. These are the tables. People will be there with several boxes or books doing research throughout the day. This is our microfilm section. So that's where people, view whichever periodical that they're looking at. Get ready for some Kubrick style camera work right now. It's a descent down into the archives. Just forewarning, it is, I feel like it's like showing my room because it's a little under construction and that we're working on a lot of things at the same time. That's what I'm working on right now, that table. These are microfilms. These are stacks full of boxes of our collections for archival work. And it does seem kind of endless. We did a major overhaul this summer in organizing and cleaning and updating locations and making sure everything is super easy to find for researchers. And there's a bunch of artwork and posters throughout the archive, which is really nice. Okay, so this next, I would ask for some participation, basically asking for you guys to use this QR code to kind of give any words that you think of when you think of the word diaspora. There are no no wrong answers. Yeah. You guys see that cloud? Or is it my PowerPoint?
We can see the cloud. We're working off computers though, PCs. They might not have been able to capture the QR code.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Some of the answers coming up in the chat are scattered, diverse.
Great. So that, and looking at the cloud, it says slave trade, outside areas, community migration, lost culture, displacement, home, African, immigration, exodus, all great answers. So I mean, for the working definition, I'm thinking also like the movement and migration of or scattering of people from an established or ancestral home. And here at Centro, we cover that throughout the Puerto Rican diaspora throughout the nation. And so for today's, we're going to be talking about Hawaii and how Puerto Ricans got from that island to this other island. Second. So yeah. So a big character in this part of history is HISPA, Hawaiian Sugar Plantation Association. So ensuing decades of industrialization, relaxed export taxation, annexation, and later territory status made sugar increasingly profitable. By 1870, 5 major plantations had consolidated their power. Gary Okiro, author of the seminal text on Hawaii's sugarcane history, has noted that this cohort of producers, known as the Big Five, held enormous political and economic sway over the island for the better part of a century. A mere 80 individuals, many of them elite who boasted ties to the sugar industry, owned close to half the land area of all Hawaiian islands. The sugarmongers controlled many of the business and public services associated with their industry, from banks and insurance companies to transportation and utilities. Plantation owners first brought workers to Hawaii from China, but then the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 inspired planters to seek out new sources of labor. They turned to Japan, where they recruited thousands with the promise of lucrative short-term contracts between 1885 and 1894. An estimated 29,000 Japanese immigrants arrived to serve as contract workers on Hawaiian sugar plantations. By the turn of the century, they had become the largest ethnic group of the island. And then a series of events that unfolded within the context of the United States imperialist expansion contributed to the migration of workers from Puerto Rico to Hawaii. The events on this slide gave way for a perfect storm in favor of HISPA. In 1882, Hawaii passed, like I said before, the Chinese Exclusion Act, and eventually included Japanese workers in that. And basically, HISPA tried to, or feared their potential voting power as a group, grouping them together. This level of strategy and control over laborers would become a permanent theme and weapon. So HISPA required to find alternative sources of labor, non-Asian. The annexation of Puerto Rico, Hawaii, Guam, and the Philippines facilitated the transfer of Puerto Ricans from one US territory to the other. And then comes 1899's Hurricane San Ciriaco, devastated more than half of the island of Puerto Rico, destroying crops and dwellings and killing more than 3,000 people. Thousands of Puerto Ricans who had been dependent on farming found themselves destitute and jobless. So they chose to leave their homeland for what they were thinking would be better opportunities. And here's where you get to see parallels between Puerto Rico and Hawaii. Both islands were annexed by the US in 1898. In the beginning of the 20th century, they were both agricultural societies that cultivated sugar and coffee. So that was easy, seamless transfer of skills. And linguistically, both have two languages. So Hawaii has Hawaiian and English, and Puerto Rico has Spanish and English, respectively. And finally, there's a strong military presence in both locations. And then this picture is of Hawaiian plantation boys from 1909, circa 1909. And that's part of Blaise Camacho Soto's collection, which we'll eventually get to after some historical context. And here is a migration map. Between 1900 and 1901, 11 migration expeditions took place from Puerto Rico to Hawaii. A total of 5,203 men and women and children migrated to Hawaii. They left Puerto Rico by ships from ports like Ponce and Guanica for New Orleans, and then by train through the southwest of the United States to San Francisco and Los Angeles, and finally by ship again from these West Coast ports to Honolulu. Upon arriving to Honolulu, they were sent to one of more than 30 plantations throughout the islands. The first migration was something like 114 men, women, and children who were transported. During this first expedition, approximately half of the group refused to continue the voyage. In each port, Puerto Ricans tried to escape because of broken promises and horrendous conditions they encountered on the trip. The trip was longer than they were told. They were not given proper clothing and medical attention. These all were things that they were promised before leaving. Okay, yeah. I have to admit, people, I forgot. Okay. Sorry if you were waiting long. Okay. Okay. So where was I? Many were apprehended by sheriffs or labor recruiters and forced to continue the trip. So the most numerically significant act of resistance took place in San Francisco Harbor, where 56 Puerto Ricans escaped and inevitably formed the foundation of their community in San Francisco. This resistance brought public attention to the horrendous conditions of trip and draconian tactics used by HISPA on immigrants. They were very upset. The Examiner, then a leading California newspaper, accused Hawaii planners of running a slave system, and that's a quote. Not only did many refuse to get back on the ship in California, the ones who continued the trip to Hawaii from California seized control of the vessel. They were upset. Their food was dumped into cattle troughs on the steamer, but HISPA was the one that was upset. They were like, how dare these half-starved Puerto Rican peasants protest these inhumane ways of, the way they're being treated. So to retaliate, HISPA started to implement negative image and reputations upon Puerto Ricans, promoting images of them being aggressive and temperamental knife wielders. This also started HISPA's exploitation on the existing differences among the various ethnic groups, investing in resources to perpetuate animosity among the workers, but more on that later. By later, I mean like in the next slide. So yeah, although Hawaii was a territory of the US, when Puerto Rico migrated there in the early part of the 20th century, it was still not a democracy. After all the bad press HISPA promoted, like the Examiner, calling them temperamental knife wielders is kind of a true story based on Miguel Cañeles, who worked there during the 1930s. So at the time of this interview, I'm about to quote, he was in his 80s and it was around the year 2000. And he said, when Puerto Ricans first arrived in Hawaii, they saw that the Japanese were treated very badly. For example, when the workers were sick, the foremen would come to where they were sleeping, drag them out of bed and force them to work. A foreman once tried to do this to a Puerto Rican. What the foreman didn't know was that the man slept with his machete under his blanket. So he pulled that out, or when the foreman started to pull him out of bed, the Puerto Rican pulled out his machete and the foreman never entered his room again. So yeah, you can't do that. That's very not good labor practices. According to American political science educator and author of Institutional Racism, The Case of Hawaii, Michael Haas, plantation owners fostered inter-ethnic conflict by intentionally recruiting Puerto Ricans as scabs to break up successful union strikes carried out by Japanese workers in the early part of the 20th century. One could imagine it was Puerto Ricans wanting to feel protected, right? As Puerto Ricans did not have a government official in Hawaii like some of the other groups did to represent them. So actually, in fact, Puerto Ricans did not want them to return, or Puerto Rican government did not want them to return. They thought they were part of the overpopulation problem. And the US government officials had proclaimed that in 1899. HISPA used racial privilege among the workers as a strategy, establishing a policy of hiring Portuguese workers as foremen, while initially denying this position to non-white workers. And HISPA also deliberately paid Puerto Ricans slightly higher salary and gave them better living quarters, according to a 1903 report from the Commissioner of Labor of Hawaii found that on one plantation, Puerto Rican employees earned $18.85 per month, 51 cents more than the Japanese. So all of this is kind of like creating I was gonna say a hostile environment, but that's like putting it lightly. In 1898, Congress prohibits also contract labor. So Puerto Ricans were able to hop from one plantation to another. That same contract labor, though, prohibited Chinese and Japanese workers from doing the same. They were bound to the plantation until their contracts were up. But this annexation did not stop sugar plantation owners from attempting to constrain the mobility of Puerto Ricans. They were required to ask for consent from their employers, which, I mean, you can only imagine how that might have went. But even with all these roadblocks, Puerto Ricans still managed to search for better working conditions and try to locate family members from who they had been separated from when they first arrived. And despite the hardships and divisive tactics that this multi-ethnic workforce endured, they managed to forge alliances with the aim of acquiring better working conditions and living conditions, and to a large degree, they did succeed. After World War II, the economic viability of sugar plantations waned. The demise of the plantation economy kind of made way for tourism-driven economy by the US multinational corporations, intensified a political, social, and economic hierarchy among the local ethnic groups. But in terms of this part of history, I'm gonna have to kind of cut it just because there's so much, and I'll put links to everything at the end, so you can explore further past World War II of Puerto Rican and Hawaii, or Puerto Ricans in Hawaii, because I kind of want to focus now on Blaise Camacho Souza's papers. Hey, where's my pic? There was another picture there, I'm not sure. Oh, there. All right. Liz Camacho Souza donated her collection of research. If everyone can mute themselves.
To hear our hours and store address, press 1. To place an order or to speak to a store associate during our business hours, press 2.
It looks like Frank Lopez has a hot mic. Frank, could you mute?
Okay, I can
please?
mute it.
Thank you.
Blaise Camacho Souza's grandparents were contract laborers, were among those who left in 1901. So her and her family were raised, 5 siblings raised in a small plantation house in Hawaii. And she didn't let tradition keep her from pursuing her education. She was the second Puerto Rican to graduate from Kohala High School and the first Puerto Rican Hawaiian to graduate from the University of Hawaii, earning a bachelor's degree in education in 1939. To finance her studies, Camacho took various jobs, including domestic work, factory work at a pineapple cannery, and clerking at the University of Hawaii's Teachers College Library. And after graduation, she worked as a teacher for some years, but then decided to slightly shift careers. Once again, showing her determination and independence, she left Hawaii for New York City, baby, to study library science at Pratt Institute, obtaining a degree in 1947 in library and information sciences. And she accepted a job as a librarian with one of the island's public schools. As she progressed upwardly in this field, she made her mark, becoming a co-founder of the Hawaii Association of School Librarians and president of the Hawaii Library Association. In 1949, she married Patrick Souza, and with whom she had 2 daughters. But after she retired from Department of Education, she dedicated herself wholeheartedly to promoting and preserving the history of Puerto Ricans in Hawaii. In the 1970s, she contributed chapters to books such as The Legacy of Diversity and Montage, a ethnic history of women in Hawaii. She published De Borinquen, a Hawaii Nuestra Historia from Puerto Rico to Hawaii, Our Story, which I'll show you at the end, and co-edited a recovered work by Carlos Mario Fraticelli titled A Puerto Rican Poet on the Sugar Plantations of Hawaii. All these drafts and manuscripts for these books that she wrote are in her collection also. And she, so like I said earlier, she founded or co-founded the Puerto Rican Heritage Society. And what they do is they seek to maintain, promote, and document Puerto Rican traditions through such activities as exhibits, festivals, and publications. In efforts to reconnect Puerto Rico and Hawaii, Camacho Souza used to organize trips and exchanges between the two. She participated in a plantation village project, a museum recreation of plantation life by setting up La Casita, the Puerto Rican house, a replica of the houses used by Puerto Rican plantation workers. So that's a nice picture of her and a family member a little bit later in life. And there's just some more pictures of her and friends in the 1940s. Just thought they'd look nice. Or around the same time. These are all part of the digital collection. It's online. I keep saying this. I feel like a YouTuber. The links are going to be at the end. So here's some collection information. The dates being from 1899 to 2003, but a bulk of it being 1970 to 2000. So that's basically after she retired, she really focused on collecting a lot more information. The collection itself is 13 cubic feet, and it consists of letters, photographs, manuscripts, notes, programs, flyers, newspaper clippings, publications, posters, and artifacts. And the collection is arranged by series. Folders are arranged alphabetically and chronologically. Her papers are a significant resource for Puerto Rican migration studies because she shed a light on the life of plantation laborers in Hawaii in the 1900s and their descendants. The papers provide an intimate portrait of family life and work, as well as the social and cultural networks created by migrants in their efforts to preserve Puerto Rican traditions. These are some more pictures from the collection. So you can see sugarcane worker and the children in the field, her uncle on a horse in the 1920s. Some more of them in the sugarcane field. In front of the house. This one I thought was interesting. This lady Celestina arrived in 1901. And these are some, this is part of her collection in the physical. It's not in online yet. They're the headlines from, I think mostly from the Examiner. Puerto Ricans say treatment was as slaves. So these are the media reports that HISPA was very upset about. Kidnapping slaves from Puerto Rico. So she has endless research of headlines like this. And there is some, this is someone, okay. This is, hello? And try to basically denying that Puerto Ricans were abused. As that laborers wanted to return to Puerto Rico because of homesickness and not the horrible conditions they went through. This is that also more from the Examiner. Puerto Ricans enticed from their homes by promises of luxury and wealth and kept prisoners by threats of violence. I believe this was like a job, like an ad almost to get people to go to Hawaii, 1900, promising 15 per month the first year, and after that 16 and 17. Authorities considering the overpopulation of this island, the destitution of its people, and the difficulty of preparing work are favorable to the plan. But here are some happy pictures. This is obviously later, after 1920s, 40s, 1900s. I think this is mostly around the 80s. These didn't have dates on them. But it shows resilience in the Puerto Rican community and how they maintained it through music, through food, through language, and through community by always finding each other. And these are great pictures. Also part of the digital collection. Making pasteles. This guy with a ukulele. Yeah, that's it for the slides. This is a picture of Blaze giving a speech, and this music, the song, is part of her book. So this is a Hollinger. Now we're really YouTube. This is like unboxing. This is her, I think, writings, some of her publications, and her text, Borinquen, Hawai'i, Nuestra Historia. This is like the culmination of all this research is in this box, because it's all the published books. And her dedication was to all those who had the courage to leave their motherland with all that was dear and familiar, to journey to a distant and strange land in the hopes of finding la vida mejor for themselves and their children. This was from 1985. She managed to, because there wasn't obviously a great record keeping of who immigrated when, or who was put on the ship when. So I think through just research and asking around, she started to compile a list of people and their descendants and ancestors. It's all in this book. Not a good way to show it, but it shows birthplace, when they arrived to Hawaii, anyone who might be related to them. So it is like a genealogical resource. And then Puerto Rican on the sugar plantation of Hawaii, where she worked on that with Austin Diaz. And this, I believe, follows Carlos Fredicelli, who arrived to Hawaii in 1901 at almost 40 years old. He was interesting because he came from doing coffee in Puerto Rico, but after the hurricane, he had to do something else. Went to Hawaii and was really disturbed by the way he was treated, because he wasn't actually like, quote unquote, a peasant in Puerto Rico. He was a little bit more of like a high sense. So he was very upset with the way he was being treated because he had never been treated that way before. But at the same time, he was also a poet and verbalized everything through this art of, dealing with homesickness and a longing. I believe he never went back to Puerto Rico. So yeah, I think that might be it for what I have today. We try not to collect too many artifacts. There is a whip that was used on people, but I didn't want to touch it, energy transference wise. So that does exist, but yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Herbert, a question.
Yeah.
Are most of the materials within the archive, like the Sousa collection, these are all personal collections, or are they more documentary and official?
It's a mixed bag. You could be looking through people like family photo books or just their professional aspects. Or if it's an organization, it'll be paperwork, everything from like who paid the electrical bills to staffing to, that they wrote, letters.
Jody had pointed out in the chat that the Hawaiian collection, University of Hawaii at Manoa Library, has the HSPA Plantation Archives, which is the corporate archive of various sugar plantations on the island.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did come across that in my research for this presentation. So, yeah, thank you, Jody, for sharing that.
And Herbert, how did you come by this collection? Was it donated by her, and are the other paper collections also donated, or do you solicit specific materials for Centro?
I think it could be. I think this one was through family. I think like it would say it in the on our website. But off the top of my head, I can't remember. But I believe it is family. But we come across collections in various ways. If they're known in the community, sometimes it just makes sense. If they passed on, relationships are built, that's donor relations, to kind of, we're like, oh, that would be perfect for us. That would give us more, rounding of I guess like the scope and content that we have. So it really, there is no one answer. I think a lot of these collections come through different ways. There are people who are alive donating stuff, like, or add to their collections periodically. And because it's such a community-based archive, we try to, help as much as we can.
There are two additional questions in the chat. Another one from Jody. This is such a significant collection. Does Centro have other collections about Puerto Ricans in Hawaii?
No, I don't think so. I'm almost positive we don't. But the way the collections in general is that you would see someone from her collection and maybe they pop up in someone else's collection or they cross paths. There's a lot of that, because it's such a tight-knit community. So I don't think we do, but
And
it is possible.
All right. The other question was, were there any legal cases filed regarding the treatment of Puerto Ricans in Hawaii?
I don't know about that. That's something I don't think I came across that in my research.
And John just dropped the link to online collections into the chat as well.
That's John from Centro. He works here. He's actually in the other room. He helped me Photoshop a map that wasn't part of my presentation. So thank you, John, for your support.
Any other collections you'd like to highlight that we take a look at when we get the chance?
I mean, I like going through writers' collections, people like Ed Vega. Right now I'm going through Victor Fregosa, who's a poet, just because a lot of it is inspiration. It's not even their writing. It could be just like things they thought were interesting that is in the scope, fits in our scope still. Pictures, a writer will kind of keep all the things that matter to them usually. So I'm kind of nosy in that way. So I do like going through their stuff mostly. But, we have Chara's collection. Miriam Colon is an actress who did a lot for local theaters in New York City. She set up the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater. And she's also the mom in Scarface. So that's cool.
And Jody's really going for MVP on the contributor side of the house tonight. She just responded to Jose. You may want to check out the book by Joanna Poblet, pardon my pronunciation, Islanders in the Empire, Filipino and Puerto Rican Laborers in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Okay, no other questions? Thank you, Herbert, for your presentation, very informative. And thank you all for attending today. As I mentioned earlier, our next event is coming up on February 24th at 6 p.m. here on Zoom. It's Cooking in the Archive. Join us then. And if you're interested in participating or joining ART, you can find more information about our organization on nycarchivist.org. Everyone, have a great night.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
forgot to share a link.
Well, you can, we have
Whoever's still around.
yeah.
Open to everyone. Maybe we could add it for when it's online.
I can send it to everyone's email if you.
Oh,
send
perfect. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
The links, I promise.
Yes.
Aloha. Oh my God. Ahoon. Hi, Laverne.
Mahalo.
Hugo, are you still there? I guess we're done.
Hello?
Herbert,
Yes.
I don't know if everyone else is gone. I'm the niece of Ruth Reynolds,
Oh, wow.
who has voluminous archives there,
Yeah.
which may be of interest to a lot of people. And there are biographies being written about her life. I hope to visit New York. I live in California soon. My daughter lives in Brooklyn, so we'll have to meet up and discuss the state of things. And I have some personal items to add to the archives. She's an
Okay.
example of someone who, gave her voluminous collection to the to Centro before she died. She had breast cancer, and actually Blanca Vasquez, who is one of the honorees for the 50th celebration, interviewed her. So there are video and audio tapes as part of the collection. And if anyone's listening, she was a friend of Albizu Campos and was imprisoned for over 19 months, the only North American supporter of independence that was so treated, and was later the Supreme Court of Puerto Rico found the whole case to be without merit. She was a pacifist. At any rate, an interesting life, and I really appreciate your presentation because it highlights, the worthiness of all the archival work that's being done. And of course, I have a special interest in Centro.
And Ruth Reynolds' collection is widely used. It's used a lot.
Oh,
Come in for it.
people quote it all the time in their dissertations and such, because it's quite a story.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. Seriously.
Sure.
All right. That's it, right?
Yep.
Bye-bye.
In terms of,
You can send it on back to me or
okay.
stop the recording. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.